So how long have you been dancing, and do you primarily lead or follow?
I've been dancing since 2007, although with blues specifically, I guess I would have started in 2008. So I guess that's 6 or 7 years now. And I primarily follow.
Why do you dance, and why did you start dancing?
I started dancing, I'm going to answer this the other way. I started dancing because I love the music, and I always kind of wanted to dance. I never took dance as a child. I played baseball for a year and did karate. But I always got really excited when I saw people dancing or TV shows with people dancing or any of that sort of thing. And when I got to college, I realized, hey, I'm an adult and I can do this if I want to. So I just went and did. And it's been a wonderful love affair ever since that day. I guess I dance because, this sort of like the generic, like I dance because I love it. And it's true, I do love it. But I think for me, sort of beyond that is that I don't think all the time that words are the best way to express things. I think they're a great way to express a lot of things. But I think sometimes they can't quite capture all the things you'd like to say. And dancing for me sort of gives another outlet and allows me to say some things that, maybe I don't have words for, or maybe aren't my words, because I don't always dance for myself.
Where do you dance, and how do your experiences with blues dancing vary from one space to another?
So I live in D.C., but I have certainly attended many dances around the country. I think for me, it's more about the people than the space itself. I mean, there are points to like the space itself of like, is the floor good or is the floor really bad? Like, sure, that's going to have an impact to a point on how the night goes. But I think for me, it's more like if I'm with a really great group of people and we're able to sort of like share those dancey ideas, then the space like could be really crappy, but it would still be really good because of them. And sort of like vice versa. If it was a really nice space, but like, not a good vibe with the people who are there, then like it could still end up being a bad night.
Now, how would you describe blues dancing?
Oh, the tough question. I think I'm still working on my like go-to golden description of describing blues dancing. But sort of like a very truncated version might be expressing things to blues music within a grounded aesthetic. I think for now that's the short one.
And has blues dancing changed since you first began?
I'm sure that it has. Everything changes all the time. I think that blues dancing, like so many other things, change because the world around it changes. I think, like, for example, there's a lot of talk in the world right now about gender. Speaking of which, and I think that because there's a lot of that going on, that works its way into the scene, and now there's a lot of questions being asked of like leading and following, and male versus female, and how people want to structure those things. And I think that stuff has an impact.
How does dancing with different partners impact your experience?
Completely impacts my experience. There are some people that you can connect really well to, and when that happens, it's so easy to be able to express the things you want to say, and also to express the things they want to say, and you can do that with each other, and that's the best, really. Sometimes it also happens where you're not on the same page as somebody else, and I hate to always bring blues dancing back to the like it's like a conversation sort of analogy, but it's true. It's sort of just like having a conversation with somebody. Either you're able to sort of bring your ideas to the table and have a person who's attentively listening and responding to those ideas, and then you do the same for them, or you don't have that, and it either becomes sort of like, well, I'm not going to say anything and you get to do all the talking, or I'm just going to barrel over you and it doesn't really matter what you're saying. And I think it's this is why people allude to this all the time, because it's a really fantastic sort of like one-to-one thing. And I think like ideally being able to just actually listen to something that somebody else is saying really would go worlds to like making more of those dance experiences a good thing, whether or not, you know, you have the same type of connection or you like the same kind of things out of your dancing, which sure, to a point has an impact. Like, it's nice to dance with somebody who dances the same way you kind of dance. But it's also really interesting, I think, to dance with somebody who doesn't do that, as long as they're still allowing you to say things and listen to you, and you're doing the same for them.
How would you describe the dynamic of lead and follow in blues?
My very basic idea about that is leaders primarily get to sort of set up the space. They get to build the framework. I liken it to sort of like building a house, and they get to sort of have the first say. It's not that they get to make the final decision, but they get the first say of like, I think we should put a wall here, and I think the bedroom should go off to this side. And the reason that the house gets built is because the follow gets to say, yes, I think that's a grand idea. Fantastic, let's put the bedroom over there. And then on the flip side, follows get to come in and sort of fill that space in, sort of bringing those different details, like, okay, let's put furniture here, and let's paint it blue, and let's hang this piece of art over on that wall. And the reason that that gets to happen is because leads say, yes, that's a great idea. Let's put that there. Let's paint that blue. You know, let's hang up that picture. I think that each role sort of gets their primary function, but the function only really works if the other role agrees to it.
Do you feel that either role sets up any particular gender or power dynamic?
I think that traditionally, obviously, like, this comes from a place where the traditional way to do this is for a male to be the leader and for a female to be the follower. Obviously, that's not the only way this can be done, and it certainly doesn't have to be that way. I think that's just the way it was done. I don't know that I necessarily think it's like better or worse for it to be a certain gender and a certain role. I think it just is. I think it just is. I think you can mix it up anyway, and it's okay. I think that like different combinations might have a different type of dynamic, but I don't think that any one of them is necessarily better or worse than any of the others.
In your opinion, do people experience dancing differently based on their gender?
I think that people experience dancing differently based on people. I don't necessarily think that there is a, like, all males will feel this kind of thing at some point, all females will feel this kind of thing at some point. And it might be true, and there might be like common things that maybe a lot of males feel or a lot of females feel. I have no idea, and there's no way I could know. I think that everybody just experiences dance in their own way, and probably everybody experiences it just a little bit differently every single time. I think it's hard to kind of make an overarching like male to female split.
Do you feel that there are ways you express your gender identity while dancing?
Yeah, I guess I think so. With regards to masculinity and femininity, I identify strongly in a lot of ways with femininity, but there are definitely also some sort of masculine traits that I also exhibit in my dancing. I think it sort of like how I choose to display them, or when I choose to display them, or when I choose to overemphasize them, kind of varies, I guess, on the situation I'm in, the partner I'm dancing with, the sort of dynamic we've set up between each other, the song I'm dancing to. Are we dancing just for us, or am I dancing in a competition? Is there a certain thing that I'm going for? And if there is, I'm going to step into that role. If that's like hyper feminine or a little bit more masculine or whatever, or like hyper masculine, like whatever the range is. I think it varies all the time.
So how would you describe femininity and masculinity?
I was thinking about this in preparation for this interview, and I read a fantastic blog post by Carsey Blanton, who posted about this, and I thought sort of the way she summed it up kind of made a lot of sense, and I sort of identified, I guess, a lot with that, in thinking that sort of masculine traits are very straightforward. They're very A to B type thinking. It's very sort of like rational, in a line. This is one step, this is the next thing, and this is the next thing. It's very directed and very pointed, and that the sort of like feminine idea is sort of a little bit more open. It's a little bit more gray area, whereas masculinity is a little bit more black and white, I guess. I really like the way that she wrote about that.
I'll have to take a look. So how would you describe feminine and masculine movement?
So I guess in my head, I tend to think of masculine movement as being a little bit more pointed, a little bit more direct, a little bit more sharp, and feminine movement as being a little bit more rounded and a little bit more broad, I guess.
Do you feel there are any pros or cons to teaching movement as masculine or feminine?
What do you mean exactly by that?
In terms of what a student might get out of it, or maybe what repercussions there could be from teaching movement as specifically masculine or feminine rather than just as movement.
Here's what it is. Okay, sure. On the pro side, you're able to sort of give students sort of like a different range, sort of like different range endpoints. Of like, okay, if we do this move and we make it really masculine, meaning that we make it really sharp, then there's sort of like an aesthetic to go for. And sort of on the flip side, we could take the same movement and change the way that we do it to make it more rounded or more feminine. And then we'll give them like a spectrum, and then they can sort of have those as like very specific points on that spectrum of like, I could make it more like this, or I could make it less like that and more like this. Which I think does wonders for opening up people's minds when they start to actually take this outside of just the like, this is the thing that I learned in class moment. And when they start playing with it on their own, then it gives them a little bit of a framework within which to do that, which I think is awesome. I guess on the con side, you could end up boxing a student in to one of those sort of ideas of like, okay, I want to do things, I want to be very masculine, so I'm going to do all of my things sharp, and they never explore outside of that box. So I guess you'd have to be careful the way that you present it and try to keep it an open thing instead of making it a closed idea. I know that since I do teach, I never try to say to my students, this is that and like done, that's just what it is and there you go. I always try to tell them like, this is a way to do that, and sort of leave it open for them to sort of play with it. I always try to encourage my students to sort of take the ideas as tools and sort of like put them in their pocket and walk away from the class and try to push past that point even further and then bring it back. So I think that as long as you sort of present things with an open attitude instead of a closed one, that hopefully it ends up more on the pro side than the con.
So do you feel you embody any feminine or masculine characteristics when you dance?
Yeah, I think I embody both. Actually, like I said, I think it's very dependent on sort of like the time, the moment, the song, the partner, the setting. I think I range definitely from both sort of more feminine qualities to more masculine, and both even in the same dance.
Does your movement change based on whether you're leading or following?
No, isn't that interesting? My movement doesn't change at all. My role changes, and sort of the decisions I make change, I guess, or the decisions I initiate change, obviously because I'm stepping into a different role, but the way that I dance as a lead is not really very different from the way that I dance as a follow.
What shoes do you wear when you dance?
When I blues dance, I always wear high heels. I have ever worn flats. I don't like it as much. For me, I think I like the aesthetic of what a heel does. I think part of that is because I'm a short person. And I think heels cheat me just a little bit into having a slightly nicer line. But that's my own personal aesthetic. Certainly don't think there's anything wrong with dancing blues in flat shoes. I prefer dancing in heels.
What changes do you notice based on whether you're dancing in flats or heels?
Well, it puts my body in a different place, for one. Since I primarily dance in heels all the time, I'm very used to the position my body is in when I'm up there. And even though my weight is in the same place when I dance in flat shoes, my body is in a slightly different one, obviously due to the elevation and what muscles are contracted when you're in heels and when you're not. So it always feels like a little bit strange, just because I don't really dance that way super often. I mean, I will and I can, but I guess I made my choice a while ago about when I was sort of like, I started blues dancing in flat shoes because I came from Lindy Hop, and I Lindy hopped in flat shoes. I experimented with heels, and I kind of danced with both for a while to kind of see what I liked better. Heels went out for me for blues dancing, although I still Lindy hop in flats. But yeah.
Do you feel you accentuate femininity or masculinity for competition or performance? And is there like a particular example that you would comes to mind?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I think I definitely do that all the time. I think more often than not in competition, I guess, or performance, I tend to accentuate more feminine characteristics than masculine, but again, like, it's still very dependent on the song. For example, if there's a song where there's sort of a clear, like, relationship dynamic going on within the song, about a guy who loved this girl and, you know, he's really upset because she left or whatever, and then my partner and I end up choosing to sort of take on that song as like an actual character, then I'm going to fill in that role, right? And I will accentuate femininity to make it clear that I'm being the woman in this song, and he would probably overemphasize masculine things to say I'm being the man in this song, like, see the connection we're making to the music. But I think that, you know, you can also sort of flip that. It's not certainly always that I take on feminine qualities. In that sense, I definitely take on masculine ones as well. I remember this one comp at Blues Muse 2 years ago. In the all skate we were dancing to, I Put a Spell on You, and I took this very aggressive and very pointed, like, here are my goals, A to B, more masculine standpoint on a part of that, in what I chose to do, and I thought it fit very well, and I really wish that somebody had caught that on camera, to be honest. But yeah, I think it depends, for me at least, on sort of like all those variables: the song, my partner, and the setting.
Right. What do you think about dancers accentuating femininity or masculinity for competition or performance from a judge's perspective?
I think it's fine. I think either way it's fine. I think that from a judge's standpoint, I mean, I'm trying to look at a bunch of things, I guess, and part of that is sort of how they're choosing to express themselves or what they're hearing in the music, and if, you know, being, you know, accentuating a feminine or masculine quality helps them to do that, then I think that's awesome. The problem I have with it is when people rely on sort of hyper exaggerating one way or the other, but not for a good reason, purely for the reason of, you know, exaggerating, you know, their femininity, for example, though it certainly goes both ways. When you're doing it for the sake of doing it, you lose points with me, honestly. But when you're doing it for good reason, and it's clear, and I can see that, then I think it adds.